Thank you to Starry Torin and two other anonymous users for subscribing to the channel. Swansea is the Tolpar's ship mechanic. He is the oldest member of the group and has been through the highest and lowest moments in life, and is currently working to take care of his family before retirement. During the events of the game, he's accompanied by a young intern called Daisuke, who unintentionally gets under his skin, but tries his best to look out for him. 7 days before the crash. Playing as Curly, we go down to utility and find that Daisuke has gotten himself stuck in the emergency phone trying to fix a vent. Swansea scolds him, telling Curly he would have gotten the axe himself, but everything has to go through the captain. Once Curly frees him, Swansea tells Daisuke that the vents are off limits, unless he wants to get severely injured. Daisuke makes a comment about Swansea's size, and Swansea asks for the axe. Curly tells Swansea to be more careful, as it could have damaged one of the cryopods. This is the introduction to Swansea before the crash. We can see that he's a stereotypical grumpy old man, who isn't afraid to speak his mind, and will call out anyone in front of the group if he disagrees with them. He comes across as being especially cruel towards Daisuke, who seems a decent person, just not the smartest. 6 days before the crash. When Curly reveals the news about the crew being laid off, Swansea is the least surprised about it, mentioning how Pony Express was the last company to use people for shipping products. When Jimmy starts yelling at Curly, he mentions how Swansea barely has any years of work left and would likely struggle to get another job. Swansea's reaction to the news show how aware he is of Pony Express's ways of treating their employees. It seems he predicted that the company would eventually be dissolved and was counting down the days until it would happen. 2 months after the crash. The crew are discussing whether they should open the cargo hold to see if there's anything they could use to survive. Swansea is strongly against it, not wanting to jeopardise his pay. They eventually agree to open it, and Jimmy goes to find the code scanner. On his way, he finds Swansea standing outside the utility room. Swansea replies that he's not letting anyone into utility, as it's all phoned up because of the crash. If anyone chopped at the phone too much, they could breach a hole and send everyone into space. Swansea guarding the utility room will become much more important later, but his refusal to move shows his stubborn nature. It's probably the reason Jimmy doesn't argue or try to overrule him. This act shows that Swansea doesn't see Jimmy as the captain, and is another way of mocking him for taking authority over the crew. 2 months after the crash. When the crew open the cargo hold, they discover that they've been shipping mouthwash. When Swansea looks at the ingredients, he notices that it contains 14% of ethanol, and immediately celebrates by drinking it. He states that he's thrown away 15 years of sobriety. He turns to Daisuke and tells him he's going to teach him how to drink like a man. Swansea is the first to accept the situation and isn't banking on any hope that they will be saved. He believes that they'll never see home again, so he's deciding not to spend his last moments in delusions of rescue. He tells Daisuke he'll teach him how to drink properly to ease him into accepting the reality of their situation. 3 months after the crash. Jimmy goes looking around the ship for Anya. He discovers her and Swansea at the end of a conversation in the cockpit. Swansea says something we don't hear, and Anya replies that she completely understands. 4 months after the crash. We find Swansea in the main room drunkenly dancing in front of the window screen, holding the axe. When Jimmy goes to talk to him, he makes fun of his name and his supposed position as captain. When Jimmy asks for the axe, Swansea says how it was entrusted to him by Curly, calling it a big responsibility, sarcastically mocking Jimmy. Swansea proceeds to swing the axe into the golden sunset screen behind him and sits down. Swansea is making the most of what little time they have left before their food and air supply run out. He's fully accepted his fate and is indirectly making fun of Jimmy for playing captain to a dismembered crew. Swansea can see through Jimmy's captain facade. He knows he's playing captain to boost his ego, rather than actually trying to help the crew. 5 months after the crash. We find out that Anya has locked herself in the medical room. Daisuke says there's a vent in utility that leads to medical, but Swansea is still guarding the door. Even when they ask Swansea, who at this point is absolutely shit-faced, still refuses to let anyone in. Later, Jimmy and Daisuke come back with a mysterious drink that they give to Swansea. When he takes it, He rips into Daisuke about his skills as a mechanic and how he thinks his failure will make him better, but in reality, he'll just end up older, uglier, and meaner than before. He turns to Jimmy and makes fun of his attitude as the captain. He drinks the cocktail and collapses onto the ground. In this moment, Swansea is projecting onto Daisuke. He says that he should have never been here in the first place and that he thinks all of this will lead to something better, but you just learn more about the truth of your situation and job. I think he feels bad for Daisuke, but is masking it in his own way. He knows that this is his first job, and it's ended up with him being stranded in space. He also feels regret for his own life and how it's turned out. He's aware of his behaviour and attitude, but at this point, it's who he is. The older you get, the less likely you want to or can be bothered to change. But he knows they'll all be dying on the ship, so what's the point of changing? 8 hours until judgment. Daisuke is lying down in the main room, covered in his own blood and in terrible pain. Swansea appears and says to go get the extra disinfectant they found earlier. Jimmy mentions the cocktail, which Swansea has no memory of. Jimmy and Swansea go and rush to find some disinfectant to try and save Daisuke. 6 hours until judgment. Daisuke is still in pain, especially after Jimmy used the mouthwash. Swansea is sitting over Daisuke holding the axe. Daisuke is moaning in pain. Swansea tells him to calm down. He says that he'll never become as miserable as him in this line of work. He calls Daisuke a useless ray of sunshine, saying that he's not the smartest or the most ambitious, just a good kid trying his best. Swansea says he could have taught him a lot. Finally, he tells Daisuke to close his eyes, as the camera pans out, and Swansea brings the axe down on Daisuke, putting him out of his misery. Jimmy yells at Swansea and tries calling him out for lying about the foam and utility and talking to Anya behind his back. Swansea replies that Daisuke wasn't going to suffer under Jimmy's delusions and laughs at Jimmy for his accusations. He reveals that Anya was telling him stuff instead. He mocks Jimmy for his theory, knowing that he wants to be the one to get into the cryopod. He tells him that he can get into the pod, as he has everything he needs on the ship, and to tell everyone whatever story he wanted. He takes the axe and leaves until Jimmy grabs the gun. Swansea starts running at Jimmy with the axe. This is a very sad moment in the game, as Swansea has tried to care for Daisuke up to this point, but he let his drinking get the better of him and leaves Daisuke with Jimmy, who takes advantage of him. Swansea did an honourable thing of putting Daisuke out of his misery, as sacrificing your own humanity for the sake of someone else's is extremely difficult. It also represents how swans will kill their young to put them out of their misery. Swansea definitely wanted Daisuke to live, as it's heavily implied that he was saving the cryopod for him and hiding it from Jimmy, knowing how selfish he was. It's speculated that when Anya spoke to Swansea, he told her that he wanted Daisuke to get into the cryopod. She understood completely, as with her own situation, she didn't want to suffer anymore either. If you want to know more about Anya's story, I've already made a video about her which I'll put in the description below. It's a little unclear why Swansea leaves after Daisuke's death, and then tries to kill Jimmy 5 minutes later. Even though you can get the gun straight away if you find the code for the gun case earlier, in the context of the game, Jimmy has to get the code from the cockpit and then use it on the case in the medical room. My headcanon was that in that time frame, Swansea saw Daisuke's blood coming out of the vent in utility and gathered that Jimmy manipulated Daisuke into going in to save Anya, so he ran at Jimmy in revenge. 6 hours until judgment. Jimmy has locked himself in the cockpit, and Swansea is banging on the door, yelling violently and threatening to kill him. The scene cuts away as Swansea breaks the window and grabs the lock. Take responsibility. This scene takes place in and out of Jimmy's reality. Relating to Swansea, we find him tied to a chair with a gun on the floor in front of him. We pick it up, point it and shoot him. Jimmy is teleported to a graveyard. This kicks off a sequence where Jimmy has to shoot Swansea 3 times before Swansea axes him 10 times. Swansea will run around the maze-like graveyard and will divert his path if Jimmy looks in his direction. When Swansea gets close, you'll hear and see the screams of static. If he gets you, the message from the mouthwashing commercial, take care of it, and 99% kills appear, and Jimmy gets teleported to the start. Once you shoot him 3 times, you're teleported back to the ship. Swansea's silhouette is sitting in the chair, but this time he's not tied up, with Jimmy standing opposite him. In the background, we see scenes of Swansea's life. Swansea starts monologuing about how he was a drunk for 13 years of his life, until he saw a vision of his own death. He became so scared by this, he managed to become sober and restore his life. He got a job, alone, got married, and had children, hoping to raise them to be better than himself. However, this was not what he expected. He did everything he thought would make him a good man. But he realised that his best days were when his only issue was finding his next bottle. Swansea tells Jimmy he's a selfish coward who can't accept what he is. Jimmy is only able to reply that he'll fix everything. Swansea's last words, "Fuck you," before Jimmy raises the gun and shoots him. In this scene, through Jimmy's perspective, Swansea is chasing Jimmy around the ship with the axe. We gather this as Swansea goes from attacking Jimmy in the medical room to chasing him into the cockpit and potentially ending the fight in utility where he's eventually tied up. The scene after, where Swansea is talking to Jimmy, shows how Swansea thought that being the ideal man is doing what society deems ideal, having a good job and starting a family. In reality, that didn't make Swansea any happier than before when he was an alcoholic. He much preferred his only worry being where he could get his next bottle than worrying about his family. The achievement he felt at the end of the bottle of alcohol felt better than working a job and having a family. The only thing he regrets is not being able to save Daisuke, to give him a chance at life like he had. Swansea understands that what he's saying sounds horrible, but he knows his final moments have come and would rather admit everything he's bottled up than take it to the grave. He uses this to take one last jab at Jimmy, who has been prioritising his own survival and ego by berating Anya, manipulating Daisuke, and taking out Swansea, his loudest critic. He calls him out for his selfishness and delusions. Swansea knows he's lost, but goes out the way he was, telling the truth to everyone no matter how harsh it is. Swansea is a severely underrated character in Mouthwashing. I feel he's not as popular and is left out of fan edits and unofficial merchandise or original content because he's much older and has a rude personality, at least at the start of the game. Personally, I think Swansea is a great character, and I'd consider him the closest thing to the hero of Mouthwashing, as he tried to stop Jimmy and put Daisuke before himself. He's the most self-aware of his flaws and is not afraid to call people out for their own. Behind his serious nature, he's just someone who has been through enough of life's hardships and can see through other people's masks easier than others. He really does care for Daisuke and believes that he may have been able to bring back some happiness that he'd lost with his sunny personality. Thank you for watching my third video on mouthwashing. This was one that I was looking forward to, as I believe Swansea is very underrated. It was quite of a challenge to do as well because, like, on the surface, Swansea seems like an asshole, which is the point. Um, but is just trying to do his best in life, and he wants to reach the high he felt when he was an alcoholic, but through something that's a lot healthier. And also with the age difference between myself and Swansea, it's interesting to put myself in an older person's shoes and um, get their perspective on what they may be going through and potentially understand their point of view, which I feel like people will brush off a lot. Well, anyway, that is the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching. I much appreciate it. And please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. I love to hear feedback and anything I can improve on because I really enjoy doing these. My next video will be on the captain himself, Curly, and I look forward to an interesting one to see how I view him because everyone's views on him are very diverse and very different. So I hope you look forward to that, and I will see you in the near but probably far future.